Um, and some, woo,
you doing all right over there?
We all get in these hustle and bustles, and yeah, he went ahead and clicked the live button. So we've got to be completely transparent. I just sat down in this seat. So those of you watching, you're going to have to bear with me a minute while Brandon and I just chat. While I at least catch my breath and at least have one sip of coffee. I mean,
well, we're glad you're here.
yeah. I mean, I almost had to do this from the truck rolling in. You know? So, Brandon, how's things going? How have you been?
Good, man. Everything's going well. Just cruising along, working. Awesome. It's hot out here.
Yeah. Now, where are you at again?
I'm in Phoenix.
Phoenix. I bet it is hot. Yeah, I bet it is hot. So I run into you occasionally. I think ran into you at an appraisal conference out in Vegas.
Yeah.
Where you been lately? What you been doing?
Man, mostly just working on Spark and doing some appraisals. I do go to the conferences, most of them. I haven't been to all of them. Mostly the ones on the East Coast I haven't been to this year, but we're planning on going to those next year. So this year, though, we've got coming right up. We have September, the Summit, and then October, Valuation Expo, and then November, Appraiser Fest, where we'll have our first booth, and then hopefully next year hit the East Coast conferences.
Great. And then we're out in April, I believe it is, in Salt Lake City for a big conference.
Oh, really?
Out there. So yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'll go to that.
And get you out there too. So
yeah, absolutely.
Would love to have you. So it is actually 10:01. So we're going to go ahead and get started if that's okay with you. Absolutely. And we may, since we started actually 1 whole minute late, we may have to just go over at least a minute or 2 or 3. Okay. And if you've got the time, I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Just like we all are. I think I rolled in on 2 wheels or a wheel and a half this morning. So,
right.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, appraisers. Welcome. My name is Bryan Reynolds. This is the Appraisal Report webinar brought to you from Appraiser eLearning. I'm excited about our guest today. I'd like to remind you that we have this free webinar once a month. It's the 4th Thursday of every month, and it's free. So it's a great price. Just chime in. These are all recorded. So if you have to hop off of here and go look at a house or something, we completely understand. We record these. You can go back and watch the entire webinar in its entirety at a later time. We also allow for questions, so feel free to just type right in, ask a question. We'll get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. And without further delay, I'm happy to welcome my guest, Mr. Brandon Reich. He is with Spark, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I think you've got some other products as well. But Brandon, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, tell all our viewers who you are, what you do, and if you don't mind, how maybe they could reach out to you and get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me, Bryan. So I'm a residential appraiser in the Phoenix market. I've been appraising here for about 13 years now. What kind of got me into this whole Spark thing was I was back in, when the market was going crazy, and I'm trying to figure out, like, what's my market doing? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it stable? And then they came out with the MC, and I didn't think that did a good job of painting the picture of what the market's doing. So I kind of went in and made my own spreadsheet just for myself, like to really figure out, based on how I like to analyze the market, what things are doing. And I gave it to a few friends, and it kind of spiraled, and I ended up starting to sell it. It did okay. And then I ended up partnering with my current partner, and we decided to build Spark. And basically, just a trend analysis, market analysis, and data importing tool. And there's something else you told me to, and contact information. Yeah, absolutely. So you can, if you go, any appraiser can go to spark4appraisers.com, and my contact information is right in the top corner. You can call me directly, and also email right there in the top right. So it's spark4appraisers.com.
Thank you for that, Brandon. And, I as you know, I travel around a little bit and lecture. I was in New York back in November, out at Vegas. We did one in Nashville. Had a great time in Nashville, where Appraiser eLearning's based, by the way. So I travel around a little bit, and I have historically always, on the PowerPoint, I have my phone number in there, and it's actually my cellular number. And every time I give that, I think, I really need to quit giving myself because, you're a busy guy. I'm a busy guy. All of our viewers are very busy people. But I give it out, and I welcome folks to reach out to me. I never call them back, so it doesn't matter.
Why bother?
I'm kidding. I do try to get back to our folks. So Brandon, I appreciate you, number one, being here. Number two, giving your contact information. So let's just dive right into this and figure things out, because I have an office in Nashville, and while they're using your product, I personally don't know a lot about it. So I'm going to be kind of like a lot of our viewers today, I believe, that is going to say, what in the heck is Spark? I mean, I know you mentioned you created, by the way, that's the American dream. Congratulations. You created a spreadsheet. You had a few guys look over your shoulder and say, hey, that's pretty cool. And the next thing you know, you're selling the thing. Isn't that awesome? Congratulations.
That's crazy, I mean, who would think you could make money selling a spreadsheet? But yeah, that's crazy.
Well, I tell you, when I got into this business, when, I was in mortgage banking and did some things before appraising, and I thought, do you mean to tell me that someone is actually going to pay me for my opinion? Because I can tell you my opinion all day long. I mean, I'm pretty good at telling you what I think. So,
most appraisers are.
All the naysayers out there and all, people complain about the appraisal profession and whatnot. It really is a fantastic career. It really is. And I know I'm going to have some hate mail and people say, wake up, Brian. But I tell you, there's obviously cons behind it, but there's a lot of pros. And so one of the things we want to talk today about is automation and how things have changed. Back in the day when I was in Chicago, we didn't have access to closed sales even on the internet. In fact, windows were something you raised and lowered, right? You had to actually go into a realtor's office and get the sold book and look it up by hand. And so technology is it's just getting better and better and better. So I'm going to throw this back to you. Tell us exactly what Spark is, and just in an overall summary, what does it do?
Yeah, so overall summary is it can import the comp information for the comps that you, the appraiser, choose, both from MLS and public records. It can import that into your actual form based on how you like to do things. Like some appraisers want the lot size to always be based on public records, and maybe the bedroom count to be based on MLS, or however you want to do it. You do it how you want to. It's all customizable, and it'll throw that into your report. And then on the flip side, we also do a full and I think rather robust trend analysis. And it's something where we don't actually analyze your market for you. You tell us how you want to analyze your market. You tell Spark, and then Spark will run that analysis. So as you're going through and deciding in your form, is it stable, increasing, or declining? And with absorption and housing supply and market prices and all that stuff, as you're going through and deciding, Spark just pops up with a window and says, based on how you like to analyze things, these are the numbers. And then you decide as the appraiser which box you want to mark in your report. And then we throw all that into your report. And we also create a digital work file for you. So all the data is in there, all the charts, all the tables of data, all the property information from MLS and public records, all there. And I neglected to talk about, we also just added cost data. So we partnered with dwelling costs. So now Spark can fill out the cost approach, and it will also has a site extraction tool. So it'll actually run the cost approach on the comps you choose. And so you can extract your site value and decide what you want to call your opinion of value for the subject site.
Wow. That's amazing. That's pretty interesting. And that's always been a challenge for me, especially when I'm appraising in a subdivision and it's built up. There aren't any, you're out in the county, you can find some lot sales typically and do a comparable sales analysis on vacant land sales. But man, what if you're in a subdivision and the houses are 50 years old and there are no vacant lots? There's been none to sell, and there's 6 different ways to develop an opinion of site value. And you've made it easy, right? My understanding is the appraiser's still in charge. I mean, you're not spitting out this number and it goes in the report and I can't manipulate it, right? I mean,
no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm an appraiser too, and I get that. So Spark will tell you the data, and then you, the appraiser, decide what you want to call your opinion of site value based on the data. So yeah, absolutely. Appraiser always in charge, whether that's the trend analysis, the site value tool, or the comps themselves. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. Is this tied to the MLS, or I mean, how does, you said it imports it all in, and then you have
Yeah.
the graphs and the things that you can run that look fantastic. Actually, a lot of the clients these days are kind of expecting that stuff, right?
Right. They are.
And
Yeah.
and appraisers watching, think about it. Put yourself in the client's chair, or let's pretend you're the client. You hire an appraiser. If you're getting more data or more analysis, and sometimes the client doesn't want that. And listen, I'm a
Sure.
big proponent of doing restricted reports, doing an oral appraisal report. Let's meet the needs of our client. If they don't want to see that stuff, then that's fine.
Right.
But if you do have a client that's interested in seeing those analyses, if I have one appraiser or one service provider that's providing really easy to read, pretty stuff, the graphs and whatnot, and one that's just not providing me anything,
Yeah.
I may lean to that. I don't know. So does it work with the MLS, or do I have to enter that data in, or how does it
Yeah.
pull
No,
these
good questions.
populated in?
So what you do as the appraiser, you go in, and essentially what we prefer the appraiser to do is do 3 searches, and this is kind of how I was trained anyways in the beginning when I started appraising. Is I do my big search of my defined neighborhood boundaries, however you're defining them on page 1 of your report, assuming a typical Fannie Mae report. So you do your search, and it's all the properties, all the single family homes, or all the condos in there, and I export that right out of my MLS, and I've got a file that I can then upload to Spark. And so that's what we call the neighborhood file. It's just all the properties in the neighborhood. Then you narrow it down to just the competing properties. So whatever you, the appraiser, decide is competing, you narrow it down to that, and then you export that from your MLS, and that file is also going to be used in Spark. And then last is from that competing file, you just choose those properties you want to actually load into your grid, assuming you want to use Spark for that. So you just narrow it down to the 4, 5, 6, however many. We allow up to 30, which is crazy to me. We initially with Spark, we had it limited to 15 comps, and we had appraisers complaining that 15 comps wasn't enough. So we raised it to, I know. So we raised it to 30. So anyways, yeah. So essentially you would have 3 files then: the big neighborhood, the competing properties, and then narrowed all the way down to just the properties you want to load into your grid.
All right. So if I'm hearing you right, I could go, in my community here. By the way, I'm broadcasting from home. I'm in Owensboro, Kentucky. If anybody knows where that is, probably not. We sit along the Ohio River, and we're just, a couple of miles down the road from, or up the road from Nashville. So the Appraisal eLearning offices are based out of Nashville, Tennessee. But here where I live in Owensboro, we have a little neighborhood. It's called Thoroughbred Acres, if you will.
Okay.
And, there are particular model homes. So we have 2-story models. We have, and I don't know the names of those, but one in particular, I do know the name. It's called a Gulfstream model. So let's say I was appraising a Gulfstream model today. I could do a search of our MLS and pull up every sale that has occurred over the last, say, 18 months. And then you're saying I would download that into a file, and then that's how we get Spark and the MLS to communicate. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Essentially, yeah. In your MLS, you just hit, every MLS we work with has an export button. So once you're on that screen with those results, you hit export, and then that file, you can literally just drag and drop it right on top of Spark, and it just loads it in.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: Does this is Spark a standalone software? Does it work with my appraisal software? How does that work?
Yeah. So, well, you could use Spark without integrating it with your form filler, although you would lose a lot of the benefits of Spark. But yes, you could do that if you want to. But we do integrate right now with any a la mode products, with ClickForms, and ACI is coming up soon. We're in the middle of working with their development team right now. So we'll be working with ACI, and then right now it's ClickForms and any a la mode product we work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of I'm going to just jump to some of these questions as they come in. Okay. So we've got some, and we may have kind of answered this one already, but let me just read these and kind of check those off my to-do list.
Okay.
First of all, Baton Rouge home appraiser says, I'm extremely excited for both Brandon and appraisers with the tools he's building. His last video was just awesome, and he's helping users see in terms of trends and ease of use. So that's just a kind of a shout out to you there from a Baton Rouge home appraiser. Did you pay them to, hey,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's
I'm PayPaling people right now during the live thing. Just to
give me a plug. Give me a plug. I'll take you to dinner, right? Well, here's an actual question, and it's from Andrea. And I believe we've answered it, but I'll go ahead and read it to you, and you can kind of expand on it. Andrea says, does Spark work with my local MLS, Real Comp in Michigan? So hello, Michigan. Thanks for watching today. Brandon, take care of Andrea for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrea. Yes, Spark does work with Real Comp in Michigan. For any appraisers out there in other MLSs, you can just go to that website I gave at the beginning. It's spark4appraisers.com, and there's a big button at the top that says coverage areas. You can just click on that and find out if we work in your area. If we don't work in your area, there's going to be a button where you can click, and it will send us your information saying, hey, I want Spark to work in my area. Why aren't you there yet? And that will move your MLS up in priority on our list.
Oh, great. So they could actually contact you and say, hey, we're interested in working with this product. And that would prompt you to kind of zone in on those first. So, the moral of that story is if you ask, you might get it moved into your neighborhood a little quicker.
That's right.
Or your appraisal office a little quicker. Okay, great. So another question for you, Brandon. The Appraisal Foundation has come out with some advisory opinions. And in fact, in this latest version of USPEP, it talks about technology, big data, how we as appraisers, I mean, we're kind of becoming inundated with, regression. Everybody hears that term and they get scared. And I always tell folks, I tell appraisers like your grandmother or your parents even told you when you sit down at the dinner table and you didn't want to eat those vegetables. What did they say? They said, just try it. Just try it. You might like it. And so that's what I say about regression and whatnot. Just try it. You might like it. And we could talk about that a little bit later on, because I know you may have something with that on another line. But what the advisory opinion is basically saying is it's saying that appraisers need to be cautious. Appraisers need to be careful using tools or analytical methods or techniques or software that they really don't understand or they don't know about.
Yeah.
In fact, they use an example of a standard deviation. And the example is, the appraiser just didn't understand what standard deviation was. And so they just thought, well, the higher the number, the better it's got to be. And by the way, viewers, that's completely opposite, right? The lower the number, the better. So the appraiser, by not understanding that analytical term, I guess, they went in the wrong direction and hence would have skewed their results. So do I have to be a mathematician or a statistician or something like that to run this thing? Or do I need to hire a couple of experts to?
Yeah, absolutely. Spark will not work unless you're a statistician and you've gone to college for that. Yeah, no.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you tomorrow. No. No, the answer is no. You can, what we have built into Spark. So obviously it performs all the calculations, but the appraiser is going to want to know, or at least hopefully the appraiser is going to want to know what is actually happening in the background. And so when you're in Spark, what we do at the end is we provide you with a complete digital work file. And one of the PDFs we give you is called the calculations PDF. And it's basically a document that explains step by step how everything was calculated in the 1004MC, for the trends that it analyzed, the regression information, the equations, all that information will go into a document for you forever for that property to keep, so that if you ever got called to the mat in a few years for some reason, then you have it all right there in black and white, like how everything was calculated.
Now, let me ask you this, Brandon. I hate to read. I mean, it's one of my faults. I wish I was an avid reader, because I know that's how you get smart, and I could use some smart, right? But I would rather be fishing or sleeping or having a cocktail or something rather than reading. and I wish I was an avid reader. So I'm just telling you, if you give me how big is this little easy user guide? Because the HUD handbook is 1,009 pages. I don't know if you knew that, but the HUD handbook is 1,009 pages. Who's going to read that thing, right?
Right.
So what I do is zone into the particular areas of the HUD handbook that are applicable to appraisers, and I read that, and that's about all I read. So is this going to be labor intensive that it's going to take me a year to read it? Or do you have any? Somebody mentioned videos. Do you have some shortcut videos where I could have you read the book to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So our goal was to double HUD, so we're at 2,000 pages.
Great.
And no, it's a few pages long, but yes, absolutely. We have multiple methods of helping the appraiser understand what's going on. So first of all, the first time you use Spark, there's a built-in tutorial walkthrough process. So it's just like when you get a new app on your phone and it says, click here to do this and click here to do that. That's all built into Spark the first time you use it. So it's going to say, click here to, change your trend analysis. Click here to change the public records from MLS or whatever. So it explains and walks through all that with you. And then if that's not good enough and you want more, then while you're in Spark, there's a button at the top where you can click help. And there's a big list of all the features you might want help on, like understanding your trend analysis. And you click that, and it's a little 4-minute video of me explaining it to you and walking you through the whole thing. So you don't have to go and read that handbook.
Great, great, fantastic. Well, in a minute, I believe Ben said you might have some slide or some screens that you could share so we could actually see this thing in works. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that in just a second, because I'm just telling you, Brandon, for me, I'm a visual guy. I'm an audio guy. I'm not a reader, right? So, if I hear something, if I want to learn something, I typically will go and have someone lecture or train me, or I'll hire a coach. But I'm kind of a touchy-feely kind of guy. So if you've got some screens you could share, I would really be interested in seeing that and seeing what this thing can do, because we can talk about how wonderful it is all day, but seeing is believing. So
absolutely, yeah.
I have another question, and I don't know this Andrea, but I kind of like her. She says, I use a competing product like this. Could I try Spark to compare? Man, I might have to hire
Andrea,
her.
I've been paying Andrea for the questions. That's a great question, and you absolutely can. So again, that website, Spark for Appraisers, there's a button that just says click here to get started, and you can use Spark depending on your form filler. It's 12 times you can use it for free to make sure you like it. So you can use it on 12 reports for free, and then after that you have to pay. Yeah. So you can absolutely try it out. Make sure you like it before switching over from a competitor. Definitely.
Great. Fantastic. So there you go, Andrea. You can put that to test, see which one you like better before just canceling one and diving head first. So that's fantastic. Thank you for that, Brandon. Well, I'm going to let you go ahead and prep some screens that you want to kind of show us this thing in action. And I tell you, I don't know which ones you've prepared for us today, but I'd kind of, in addition to the analysis and the graphs and all that you can do, you kind of had me when you mentioned the cost approach and extracting the site, because that alone is huge. And let me ask you on that, Brandon, is there an additional fee for that? Is that an add-on, or is it included?
No, we added the cost data maybe 6 months ago, and no, the price stayed the same. So there's no add-on fee or anything for that.
Oh, fantastic. All right, well, I'm going to let you kind of take control here and just tell me what we're looking at.
Yeah, so essentially, what you're looking at here is the grid, what we call the grid side of Spark. So basically, there are 3 sides to Spark. You've got the grid, which is what we're going to load into your report as far as your comps, your sales grid, your rental comps, whatever. And then we also have the market analysis side of Spark, which we call it the 1004MC. It's a little misleading because it's a lot more than that. And then we also have the cost data side. So those are the 3 sides. So right now we're looking at the grid side. And so essentially all I did was I just took that file from my MLS that had my comps in it. I drag and drop it over onto Spark, and this is my grid. And then what I can do here, I can drag things around. You can set up Spark to automatically sort the comps by distance to the subject, by sale price, by date, whatever it is. You can have Spark do that. And the way we built Spark is basically everything over on the left that's in blue is something you can click on to customize the way that data is going to go into your grid. So if you don't like the way Spark is loading in the heating and cooling line of your grid, you don't like those default settings, you just click on heating cooling, and Spark will show you a list of, here, I'll just do it. Spark will show you a list of all of the heating and cooling options that your MLS has. Now, I'm in Phoenix. We don't have a lot of heating and cooling options, so this is the entire list. And you just say, okay, when the agent said forced air, this is what I want it to say. When the agent says central air, this is what I want it to say. You can also choose to override that. So if you don't care what the agent says about the heating and cooling, you can just override that with whatever you want right here. And then you just hit save changes, and then Spark remembers that forever until you change it again. And it will load that.
So each one of those fields customizable like that?
Yes, every one of these fields is customizable like that.
Right.
And then some other things. So let's say I loaded these in. Now I also want to load in my subject. So I can click add subject here. I can either load in a listing for it, or I can click type and just type in the address or parcel ID number, and Spark will go grab the data for it. Or what happens often is if you're doing an appraisal for a purchase, your subject property might be a pending sale. So let's just say it's my comp 7 right here. So I can just take that comp 7 and I can literally just drag it up to where it says add subject and drop it on. And so now I've converted that property to my subject. So I've got my subject here, I've got the rest of my comps. And then, let's say maybe your client asks you for an REO addenda, and you got to load in 3 listings into an REO addenda. And so let's say I had these 3 here for that. So all you do is you click and you drag them up to where it says REO listings and you drop them on. It's pretty straightforward. And now when I click that REO listings tab, I've got my REO addenda right there. And that means Spark is going to add that addenda to my report, if it's not already there, and load those properties into it. And then the last thing you might care about on this screen is you'll notice that there's some features that are in red. So comp 3 right here, you see the GLA is 1532 square feet and it's in red. So what that means is there's a discrepancy between MLS and public records. And so all I do is I can hover over that, and then Spark will show me MLS says 1532, public record says 1494. So I can pick one of those. I can choose if I want to switch every comp to use public records instead of MLS. And you can also, last thing on that is you can also, when I click above grade GLA, I can choose to tell Spark, I always want Spark to default to public records for GLA instead of MLS. However you want to do it, it's kind of all there. And then Spark just, go ahead.
Let me pause you there. When you're doing that public records, are you tied? I mean, how many areas are you tied in? Are you nationwide, or you're in
Yes.
states?
Public records is nationwide. Yeah, we're in every county.
So you can get that all over. Fantastic. Now let me ask you this: if that red item there, that 1534, that's going to show up if there's a contradiction between the MLS and the public records, and then it gives you options to go in and click which one you want. If I just don't want to do anything, if I want to say, I'm going to rely on the MLS as opposed to the assessor data, can I could just leave that red like that, and then I don't have to worry about it.
Absolutely. If you always know that you just want to use either public records or MLS, you just leave it how it is. And then when you hit export and send this into your report, it'll just go into your report that way. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not going to be red in my report.
No, it won't be red in your report. But we will put a document in your work file that says for comp 3, whatever that property is, it'll be highlighted in red in your work file as well. So you can quickly look through that and see that you had the GLA had a discrepancy.
Gotcha. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. I just want to remind our viewers, if you have any questions as Brandon is demonstrating this on the screen, feel free to type in and we'll get to as many questions as we can. And go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I'm just going to go ahead and swap over right now to the market analysis, which I think is kind of the fun one. Because I'm nerdy like that. I looking at the numbers. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and load in the data. I've got my competing file, which I talked about at the beginning. You've got the big file, which we call the neighborhood, then the smaller one, which is the competing. And you'll see I'm loading in a lot of data points. And like that last one was 970, and this one's going to be like 3,000. I know that most people are not going to have files that big, and that's okay. The reason this is so big is because I went and got 10 years worth of data, and it includes all listing types. So active, canceled, pending, off market, all those. So that's why that's so big. So I'm going to go ahead and click next now.
So I'm gonna when I start using the Spark, I'm gonna be using 2 files, and those are files that I go into my local MLS and I extract basically the data into a format that Spark can read, and then but I'm going to do 2 files. I'm going to do one that is the universe of sales for the neighborhood and one that are competing properties. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's for your market analysis. And then some appraisers, and I'll get into this if we have time, is they'll load in what we call the alternative properties. And this is just for the appraiser to do whatever they want with. Some appraisers like to load in the whole county just to see what the county's doing, or load the whole zip code and see what the zip code's doing. So that's what this is for. I won't get into it too much, but I will show you a little bit. So yeah, let's go ahead and swap back to the MC. There we go. So, and I'm going to actually change, and then this is another benefit of loading in data into a tool like Spark, is you can do a retrospective analysis. So right now you can see on the fly, I'm changing my effective date back to January 26th. So if you're doing something from 2015, you just load in the data, you pick your date, and Spark will load in the data as if it was that date. So
Nice.
here I've got my data, and I've got the 1-unit housing, which Fannie Mae says in the selling guide should be based on the broader set of data, the complete, all the single family homes, for example, in that defined neighborhood, however the appraiser is defining it. So that neighborhood data set is what Spark is using to calculate this, your low, high, and predominant. And then you've got, of course, on a Fannie Mae form, the top of page 2 numbers, and then the MC here. And this is all calculated just the way Fannie Mae wants. But what I think is kind of the cool part of this is, as you're going through and deciding, is my market increasing, stable, or declining for median sale price? What you would do is you go and hover over these checkboxes, but as you do that, you can see these little cards popped up. So what Spark is doing is it's showing you the analysis that you, the appraiser, chose to see when you're trying to decide how you want what you think the market's doing. And so this is the default. This isn't how I analyze the market, but this is the default settings in Spark. So you can see, if you look at those cards, it might be hard to see in the webinar, but it says at the top of the left card, competing data. So it's analyzing my competing properties over 12 months. And then right below that, it says median sale price. And then the other card, the one on the right, says it's the same thing, competing data over 12 months, but that one is median price per square foot. And in my area, I like analyzing based on median price per square foot. And a lot of appraisers over on the west side of the country tend to do price per square foot a lot. And so it's just by default, we just show both. So based on the one, it's going up at 0.6% a month, and based on the other, it's going up at 0.2. So if that's enough information for you, you can make your decision, call it whatever you want, and move on down the line. And as you go down, Spark shows you again whatever analyses you chose to see for each of those. Like for your for your seller concessions, it pops up a card and shows you there's 66% of the sales had concessions. So obviously, yes. And then for foreclosures, 6% were REOs, and then you decide whether you want to mark yes or no. And then the same thing with your 1-unit housing trends. Like for marketing time, 38 days on market based on that data, so I'd mark under 3 months. 1.4 month housing supply, I'll mark shortage. So you kind of go through, but you set it up how you want to. So let me just give you a quick example here. And we have profiles too. Might be getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but so the profile is for if you like to analyze things differently for different types of properties. So let's say for a complex, maybe rural or whatever, maybe a retrospective assignment, you might like to analyze things a little bit differently. And so you can set up profiles. And so I'm going to go to my other profile here, which I call just my standard profile. And now when I go to hover over the box, you can see a lot more data shows up when I'm trying to decide whether things are going up or down. And that's because that's how I like to analyze the market. And then if you want to dive even deeper, basically behind the 1004 MC, you can't see it, but that's where all the analysis is happening. So if you want to actually dive in and look at the analysis for sale price, you just literally click the words median comparable sale price. Spark flips over and you see the other side of the MC where the actual data is happening, or the analysis, I guess. And so right here, I've got my scatter plot that I like, and it's my competing and my neighborhood, so I can analyze them next to each other. And then over here, I've also got my competing in neighborhood, but you can see it's analyzing 2 years worth of data rather than over here, it's 1 year worth of data. And it's all customizable. So, and it's just like the other side where I said, if it's blue, you can click on it to change it. So right here, I'll click on 24 months, change that to 5 years, and then it just updates on the fly like that. It also updates the regression analysis so you can see how the trend changed. Let me go ahead and change that back to 24. You can change whether it's a bar chart, a scatter plot, however the appraiser likes to analyze their data, however they want to show the chart to their client, all that stuff, that's all customizable here. And by the way, all of the comments up here that are going to go into your report, if you want them, they're all based on the analyses that you wanted to perform. So right here, when I click on this neighborhood data card, it flips over and I can customize any of this stuff. And right here, it says including comments. So that means this analysis that's taken place, I can include comments based on that analysis right here. And you can see it's up here in orange. It says the same analysis was performed on blah, blah, blah. The median sale price was this. And you can also have it include like the low and the high, the regression result, all that information. If you want it in your comments, you can put it in there. Go ahead. Were you about to say something?
Yeah. Let me jump in here just for a second. And this is great stuff. And I certainly want to come back to it, but I got some housekeeping things to do. And the questions are coming in like crazy. So if you don't mind, let's pause on your graph. I'll go ahead and let you go ahead and just put that on pause. You can go back to shooting yourself if you want to, because we'll ask a few questions and then we'll come back to a little bit more of this graph, because I definitely still want to see the site extraction tool that you told me about.
Yeah,
you have the ability to show that. So, hey guys, this is Bryan Reynolds with the Appraisal Report webinar hosted to you by Appraiser eLearning. We're tickled to death to have you viewing. If you miss part of this, you can go back and watch a recorded version. It should be available up on our YouTube channel pretty quickly after this broadcast. In fact, if you go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, you're going to be in the know. I've got some amazing guests coming up over the next few months. Jim Baumgartner is going to be up next month. Scott Cullen's coming back to visit with us, and some surprise guests that are coming in right around the corner. So go ahead and subscribe to that YouTube channel. You'll be glad you did. And Brandon, if you don't mind, let's knock out some of these questions, because we're getting a bunch. And quite frankly, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all of them, because I want to see some of this stuff again you had on the screen. It's looking pretty good to me. So let me go back up, because we've had so many questions come in. So Shannon asked, does Spark research the sale histories of the subject and the comparables?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So actually, if you don't mind, Bryan, I'm going to turn my screen share back on and I will show Shannon exactly what she's asking about. So let's switch back over to the grid. So yes, Spark will do the transfer history of your properties, and it will load in, of course, the most recent transfer, but also, and I think sometimes more importantly to save you time, it'll load in the data that's above and beyond just the most recent. So if you had 3 transfers of your subject in the past 36 months, which is what Fannie Mae wants to see, then Spark will load in all that data. So I'm going to show you on the screen here. If I click on this where it says prior transfer history, we got these magnifying glasses. So I can click on this one and I can see the complete transfer history of that property. And I can see with a checkbox, Spark is showing you what it's going to load into your report as the transfers in the past 3 years. Now, I changed my effective date to January 2017, which is why these 3 are all in the past 3 years. And then if you don't like those, let's say you don't want that one to go in, you just uncheck it, and then it won't go into your report. You have full control over that. But by default, Spark will use what you have set down here. And it's kind of small for you to probably see in the webinar, but down here in the bottom left, it says subject is looking back 36 months, and for the comps, it's looking back 12. Again, you have full control over that. And then in the end, what goes into your report, which I will show you right here, and this is an a la mode report for those of you that use different form fillers that might look different. So first of all, we can load those comments right here on your 1004 right in this form comment field here. I don't personally prefer that. I like to load them in as a separate text addenda, and so this is how I do it, and Spark will do it either way. So right here, this is my text addenda. It says subject 36-month transfer history, and it shows me the complete transfer history, you know, the deed, the buyer, the seller, the sale price, all that information for all 3 of those transfers, and then the same for my comps. It shows every property and the transfer history. So that was a really long-winded way, Shannon, of answering your
No,
question.
but boy,
But yes.
that's nice. That you know, because I'm old school, you know, I got to look that stuff up on each one. So that would make my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing, you know, I told you at the beginning of the broadcast, I love what I do. I love the appraisal business, but there's things that I don't like about it. And boy, typing all these stuff is one of the things that I'm not crazy about. So,
Right.
a couple of other questions. CJ said the first screen appears to look like a similar, I'm just going to say competitor. Is that correct? He also says, when will you be available with ACI?
Okay, good question. So, yes. So, as far as importing the data for your grid, if that's what you meant by the first screen, is that grid screen, that would be similar to some competitors, because it's pretty straightforward as far as importing comps. You load the data in, as long as the product does a good job of translating that MLS data into a way that's meaningful for an appraiser, then yeah, that might look pretty similar. The things that might be different are maybe like the being able to easily drag around properties, and the way it shows discrepancies right on the screen for you, that we do. And then the other question was, when will it be available with ACI? I can't give you an exact date, although I literally am on the phone with them every day this week. So it's happening very soon. I think it's going to be by the end of August, but I just can't say for sure.
No, so in short order,
Absolutely.
So we have a question from Jenny, and Jenny says, thanks for the demo. I assume that you import the subject and put it in the grid. It will still import GLA from the sketch, and the sketch can overwrite. And that's a question mark.
Oh, yeah, I think I see what you're saying. So thanks for the question, Jenny. So Spark will, yeah, it'll have the MLS and public records data for the GLA. When you import it into your report, if you've already done the sketch, so you already know the exact GLA of your property because you measured it, then yes, your form filler will automatically overwrite any GLA that Spark puts in with what's in your sketch. So yeah, that's not you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Okay. A couple other questions, and then I'll get back to letting you show some more of what you've got here. This question is from 1025, whoever 1025 is.
All right.
Kind of like 007 out there, I guess. The price per square foot data would tend to be skewed. For most realtors include basement square footage within their listing. How do you deal with that?
Well, that is something that varies by MLS. So
Yeah,
if you're in an area where that happens, then Spark will extract out, if it can, the basement GLA and not include that. But there are MLSs where it's just not possible to extract that, and then there's nothing, there's nothing you can do about that. It is what it is. And so if that's the case for you, then you probably wouldn't want to use the price per square foot method. You'd either want to use like median or average.
Yeah, and I would follow up with 1025 and say this, guys, get involved. If you're in a community where you've got issues like that, go to your board, maybe try to become a committee member on your MLS committee at your board of realtors. I know a gentleman, Brian, up in the Johnson City area, and that's exactly what he did. He happens to be a real estate agent as well, but he's mostly performing appraisal services. He's an appraiser. And so what he did is he joined the committee that handles the MLS data, and he invoked change. I mean, they changed the way they list that information. And so, guys, you can make a difference. All you got to do is get involved. So if they're not doing things that are helpful for the appraisal community, and that's how I would propose that, guys. You're making our job a little harder because now we've got to take the time to figure this out. Can you just at least have another field? And they can do that. They can customize that. They can certainly add another field. So here's another question from Greek Lady. I'm getting some interesting names going on here today. Our Triangle MLS shows 0 days on the market for new construction. Does Spark compile days on market based on dates entered in the MLS or on the days on market reported by the agent?
So Spark can do it either way. And I believe, Greek lady, that in your MLS, which Spark is integrated with, that we have customized it so it won't use that 0. It'll actually perform the calculations based on the dates. If you use it and you don't see that happening, you can let me know and I'll fix it. But that is something I believe we're already doing in that MLS.
Okay, we have another one from Jenny who says, can you customize the comments also? I have a similar neighborhood analysis and comments, and I like how I write out the verbiage. Can I use that still with numbers pulled in from Spark?
So the comments are significantly customizable. You can't right now actually use your own words, though, if you don't like the words in Spark, I guess. I think that's what you're asking, Jenny. So you can customize a lot of the comments, like how they're going in, whether you're including like lows and highs and medians and all that stuff, and what analysis is being performed on how long. That's all customizable in the comments, but you can't at this point actually go in and say, I don't like the word is and I want the word are. You can't do that yet, if that's what you're saying. I think I understood that right.
All right, great. We've got some other questions, but we're gonna pause on those because I think that would take up the rest of our time if we keep going on with those. So why don't you go back to your screen share again, Brandon, if you don't mind, finish up with what you were wanting to show, and then again, I want to see the. I'll just tell you, I don't typically do a call. I'm not a big fan of the cost approach, certainly as a standalone method for developing your opinion of value. If you're appraising a bridge, I mean, you may have to use a cost approach,
right.
Or a lighthouse or something like that. But there are clients that do want the cost approach. There are times, and certainly USPAP, Standard Rule 1.4 says if necessary for credible assignment results, you must do it. So you don't have an option in that case. So I would like to see that if we have time as well, in particular of that site extraction tool you had mentioned for the land value.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just go ahead and get into that here. So I'll just finish up on this screen just by saying that, because I think it's important that a lot of times, in fact, almost all the time, these three numbers do not paint the picture of what your market's actually doing. So I would encourage the appraisers, no matter what software you're using, whether it's Spark or not, do your own analysis or do something extra on top of that to actually find out what the market's really doing. There's a lot of things in here that can be misleading if you just look at those three numbers. So the point again of Spark was you set it up how you want to analyze how you want, and then you just go through and you should be able to fairly quickly and easily, but also really importantly, accurately tell what your market's doing, and then get all that data loaded into your work file to support you down the road. Okay, so now let's switch over to cost data. All right, so here I'm on the cost data screen now. I'm just going to go ahead and load in my subject property. So I've got the grid in Spark, so I can just import my subject straight from that grid. And so here's what I've got, and it fills out the majority of things. Now, obviously, Spark isn't going to know from MLS and public records data how big your patio is or how big your garage is in most cases. So, so you just go ahead and tell Spark, okay, I've got a covered patio. It's 200 square feet, and the quality is standard. And importantly, you don't want to forget that you got to actually tell Spark the quality of the dwelling, and that's one of the key things here is the quality of the dwelling. And now, kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, Brian, with Advisory Opinion 37, it's important that appraisers understand the way their tools work. And so we're integrated with dwelling costs. So it's really important, if you're going to use this tool accurately, that you understand how the quality rating system works for dwelling costs. So as you're here, you can hover your mouse over this little eye, and it shows you the quality, the basic quality rating information. But what I encourage, and we do it in our tutorials, I encourage all appraisers, you really need to click here where it says click here for detailed quality explanation, and it will take you to the detailed explanations of how dwelling costs, how they want you to use their quality rating system. So the main key points are these right here, where how you add points to a base system based on, you know, above average flooring upgrades or plumbing or cabinets or whatever. And then down here, as you scroll through, you can see pictures of each base quality level, and you can kind of find out where your property fits in there and then just add in the points. But the point of that is just appraisers, be aware of how your system actually works that you're using. It's really important that you use it accurately. Okay, so I'm just going to say this property is 3.5 quality. and we'll say the carport is 450. And now Spark knows it has a carport because it imported that data from MLS and public records. So it knows that's there. It just doesn't know how big it is. And so I'm going to say quality is 2.5. And then I'm just going to put in my effective age. And you don't have to do this part. It's just if you want Spark to be able to automatically perform the depreciation, physical depreciation estimates there. And so what it's going to do is it just uses the basic straight line, or some appraisers call it the age life method, where it takes that, here, I'll show you the math. It shows you right here. It takes that 14 and it divides it by 60, which is what I have the lifespan set to. And that's how it got to the 23%. And that's all customizable. If you don't like the 60-year lifespan, you just click here in blue and you can change it to whatever you want. Great. All right, so then I can just hit get cost data, and then it's going to pull in the cost data from dwelling cost, and there we go. And so I've got, it's all filled out. I've got all the estimates in here. If I had had a basement, that would have all been there. A swimming pool, that would all be included if you want it to be. And then I've got the final number down here. And everywhere you go, Spark shows you the actual math going on. Now, the font is kind of small here probably for the webinar, but when I hover over this little eyeball at the bottom, it shows you the actual math. And by the way, this all goes into your work file, so you don't have to worry about memorizing it or taking screenshots or anything. And then you've got the total down here. Now, that doesn't include the site value. You can type in whatever site value you want, or you can perform the site extraction or allocation methods in here. So let's just go ahead and show you what that's like. So I'm going to go ahead and add more properties in to perform site extraction. So I'm going to click this plus button, and it says site value. I'm going to import some of those comps right from my grid. Now, first, it shows you the 3 methods we can help you with: vacant land sales, site extraction, and allocation. Now, I'm going to assume there's no vacant land sales. So let's say no vacant land sales. Do you want to perform site extraction? Yes. And so now Spark presents you with the properties on your grid and lets you choose which one of those, if any, that you want to use for site extraction. So I'm going to choose the ones here basically in order of how close they are in size to my subject site size, because for me that's going to be the most relevant. There's no real view or location differences here. So I'm going to choose that, and then we'll choose, let's just throw in all 6 of those closed sales, and then I hit import. So now I've got this information over here. So I've got all 6 of those properties, and now really, so the important thing here is I have Spark set up to default to certain things. So Spark knows from the grid that this property has a 2-car garage. And I told Spark that if a property has a 2-car garage, call it 450 square feet. And it put in a default quality that I set up. Now you can use that or not, but I find it, especially for the size, to be advantageous, because it's a lot less information that you have to fill out, because you don't know, most appraisers don't know the size of their comp garages, right? You don't measure your garages for your comps or the patios for your comps. So I have it default to put in that information. So it already filled all that in. All I really need to do now is put in quality rating and condition, which is the effective age. And so what I can do here is I'm going to assume all these comps are pretty similar in quality and condition to my subject. So we have this little push or copy button here, and I'm going to click that, and it's going to push the quality from my subject over to all of my comps. And I'm going to do the same thing with my effective age. Now, of course, if you just leave it like that and you don't go in and actually look at the properties, it's not going to be super accurate. So you want to go in and make sure, like, okay, so comp 1, it was in a little worse condition, so I'm going to say that was an effective age of 20. Maybe comp 3 was even worse, so maybe 25. And let's just say comps 4 and 5 were in much better shape. They were more updated. So we'll call those a 6 effective age. And let's just say comp 5 also had a little bit higher quality, so we'll say it was 3.8. And then all you do is you hit get cost data. And now it's filled out the cost approach for every one of those comps, and it's extracted the site value, and that's the number at the bottom. So over on your subject, the number at the bottom is your full depreciated cost. But for your comps, it's the extracted site value. And again, the math is all there, so you can see it, and it goes into your work file. And so you've got 65,000, 62, 69. But what you can do, and I kind of like this part, it's a little different for appraisers who haven't seen it before, but I'm going to click on site value and show you. So this is a little widget we have here, and you can see it says site extraction. And what we did is, and actually what I'm about to talk about with the adjusted site values, there's a little legend here. It also is briefly talked about also in Advisory Opinion 37. They talk about if you're doing a land analysis or trying to get your site value, if you're looking at the site value of your other properties, it's important that you adjust those to your subject. And so that's what we've done here. So let me show you what I mean. The blue dots here represent the actual site values that you saw right here. Those are those site values right down here that were extracted.
Right.
The red dots, though, represent you, Spark, adjusting those to your subject site size. So if you had a comp that was twice the size of your subject, you don't just want to use that site value because that's for a site that's twice the size of your subject. You want to adjust it down to the size of your subject. And so that's what these red dots for. So the analogy I like to make is the blue dots, like think about it in terms of your sales grid. The blue dots are the sale price right at the top of your grid. But the red dots represent the final adjusted value down at the bottom of your grid, which is the one you really care about. You care about after all the adjustments, what's the number? So that's the red dots. And so what you do is you take this bar and you line it up with where you think your site value should be based on extraction. So I'm going to line it up with, and in this case, it works out really well. So right here, if I do this, you can see property 1, I'm going right through the dot. Property 2, right through it. Property 3, property 4, and then comps 5 and 6 are a little bit below the line, but that's okay. Those were least similar to my subject, so that's okay if they're not quite on the line. But basically, I know that this is a pretty solid number because I've got my 4 comps are basically saying, yeah, 65,000, so I can feel good about that. It's like if you had a grid where 4 of the properties all said $65,000, you can feel pretty solid that that's a good number to use. So that's what this whole tool is for. You go and line it up with whatever you think is best. We also show you average, median, and regression here if you care about that. And then over on the right, we also perform allocation. Now, the way allocation works for us is we go and grab from the assessor data, we get the allocation percent. And then we apply that allocation percent to the actual market data, the actual sale price of those properties. Now, in my area in Phoenix, this actually doesn't work well at all. I do know an appraiser pretty well who I recently talked with, and he told me allocation works great in Nashville. So for him, allocation actually works better in Nashville, I think, than extraction does. But for me, it's the opposite, just because of the way our assessor does things. I don't get accurate allocation. Our assessor actually says that every single-family home has a 20% allocation, which is just funky and crazy.
Wow.
So anyways, but what you do here is you go and you line this up with what you want. And I'm just going to put it here because it's not real valuable, but I'm just going to line it up with between my comp 1 and my comp 2. So basically, from allocation, it says 46,000. From extraction, it says 65. And so then the appraiser goes, and Spark will never do this. You have to do it yourself because Spark will never tell you what your site value is. You go and tell it, okay, based on me reconciling this data, and I'm pretty much going to place all my weight on this because I know this just isn't accurate in my area. Sure. I'm going to say my site value is 65,000. And now when I go back to my cost approach, the 65,000's there, and it updated my total. So I've got 200 grand. And then when I'm all done, I can just hit export, throw all this information into my report, and I'm pretty much set.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Well, Brandon, thank you very much. I can't believe it, but we're about out of time.
Yeah, that went fast.
That went really, really quick. We did have several questions that we just simply ran out of time. We didn't have a chance to get to. So I don't know if you want to reach out to those folks.
Absolutely,
maybe
yeah.
This broadcast. One question was about the cost, and if you could maybe direct them in the avenue where they could obtain that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's that same. And here, I'll just share the screen one more time to show you this page.
Okay.
So let me put that page up. So it's right here. It's spark4appraisers.com. Right here is all the information you need, our coverage areas. You can click here to get started in the free trial. My contact information right here. We do have a support staff, so appraisers call us all the time. We're happy to walk you through it. I said we do have those built-in tutorials, but if you don't like that, if you prefer just like us to walk through it with you and help you out, by all means, please contact us and let us do that for you.
That's fantastic. Where are you going to be next? You've got any travels coming up that
Yeah,
if somebody
yeah, I
wanted
do. So my next one is actually the Appraisal Summit in September. Yeah.
to?
So anybody there, I'm happy to meet with anybody, talk with anybody. Are you going to be there, Brian?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be.
I usually see you there. All right, we'll see then, I guess.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, they've got me lecturing. I don't know. I just show up and do what they ask me to do most of the time. So that sometimes can be trouble, but yeah, it's a good time out there. So if you've never been to a conference, I encourage appraisers to go. It's a great
Oh yeah.
networking event. You get to meet a lot of folks. And it's a great event. I'd like to thank my guest, Mr. Brandon Reich. I would like to thank you for viewing. This is the Appraisal Report webinar. If you would like to be a guest or you have someone in mind you would like for us to have on, shoot us an email or give us a call and we'll try and make that happen. Brandon, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. And
Great.
thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, so if you have any questions for Brandon, you can reach out to him directly. If you do happen to make it to a trade show or conference and he's around, go up and grab him and shake him and ask him questions. He's a good guy. He's willing to help and available to chat with you. So it's all about just trying to give you better tools to do your job more efficiently and having support.
Yeah.
You're still in the driver's seat. At the end of the day, you're signing the report. It's your opinion. But this is just another tool in the toolbox, if you will.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you, Brandon, for being here. My name is Bryan Reynolds. You've been watching the Appraisal Report webinar brought to you by Appraiser eLearning. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.